Greetings, friends. Tim Kirby here. Today's topic is Washington always wins. As the year counts down to the final days, I thought this would be a good topic to cover because a lot of times I think one of the problems that we have when we discuss politics is perception. And I said Washington always wins because if we think about things from the standpoint of the people we sometimes call neoliberals and neoconservatives, Project for New American Century, whatever, these mysterious people who always seem to benefit from the, let's just say, the results of military spending and the adventures of NATO and so on and so forth, if you really think about it, if you think about it from their perspective, they've actually won every war. Now, I know that's going to sound kind of nuts because you're going to go back and say, well, what about Vietnam? We pulled out of Vietnam. What about both Iraq wars? They accomplished nothing. What about Afghanistan? You remember the scenes of people physically hugging on to the axle. Would that be an axle that the wheel is on? If it's vertical, I'm not sure. We'll call it an axle the wheels were on to somehow be transported away by any means from Afghanistan. Very iconic imagery, as were the helicopters over Saigon and all that stuff. There's been numerous events where the United States has put an incredible amount of manpower, ammunition, and most of all, money into some situation, and then completely bailed. And those look like losses because they're losses for America. That's the big difference. That's our topic for today. For America, they're definitely a loss. For the men who died for nothing, that's a loss. For the wealth that was spent to achieve nothing, that was a loss. But if you think about it, from that sort of beltway perspective, from your good old Lindsey Graham, I haven't seen a war I don't like, or John McCain sort of perspective, maybe those were all wins. And so as we head into 2024 here, I recently discussed about how it seems as though the Ukraine war is essentially over. It's just sort of a matter of going through the motions for the Russians to win. And that's, again, when we look at things from the standpoint of winning being national interests. But if you look at things from the standpoint of, again, these various groups that we tend to mix the terminology, be they neoconservatives, neoliberals, globalists, whatever, they could probably actually call the Ukraine war a win. Because the money was spent. What's already been spent by just the United States alone? During the summer, it was $113 billion. I think after a little bit more, we're going to probably get close to, with European support, $200 billion, $300 billion somewhere in aid to Ukraine. And, if 10 to 20% of that vanishes into a black hole, that's a whole lot of money for a very small group of people. So for them, they've won. And that's why we're stuck in this cycle, because no matter how much it looks to the average person in a Western country, or especially America, it looks like we just lose war after war after war. But from a financial standpoint and a corruption standpoint, we win, and we win. Which is another one of those things, speaking of corruption, when you come from a Russian channel, there are definitely corruption problems in Russia. But when you sort of look at the military-industrial complex, lobbying, and the Bretton Woods system, any corruption in Russia pales in comparison. Russian corruption compared to those three major corrupt phenomena are just drops in the bucket. Just drops in the bucket. So one of the things is here is that as we go forward, the real way that this globalistic, neoconservative, again, amorphous group of people could actually lose is when they finally actually kill off the goose that laid the golden egg with their adventurous corruption. Because at some point, I think that the United States, although it has insane wealth, the status that the United States gained after World War II of being really, in the Cold War, really, who the dominant superpower was, and then becoming the only world hyperpower and all that wealth. It looks like, especially based on some conversations I've had with people in the know who didn't want to come public, it's looking like that is all coming to an end. So for now, Washington, i.e. this amorphous entity has been winning all these wars that America has been losing. But when we get to the point where the goose can no longer lay golden eggs, or they've plucked every last golden feather, leaving the goose completely naked, that's the point when things start to change. That will be the point when Washington itself starts to lose. Now, the question is, could something like this actually happen? From a geopolitical way of looking at things, it would seem not, because the United States has the best geopolitical situation on the planet. We've talked about this before, so I'll spare you. 2 oceans on both sides, somewhat weak and divided Central American countries below it. Washington has also done a good job of making sure that Mexico never rises up. And Canada has 1/10 the population, sparsely dispersed over a country that's considered to be too cold to develop, even though the average, Canadian cities are more southern than a lot of Russian cities are. Moscow is vastly more north than any major Canadian city, although Canada is impossible to develop. I don't know. Maybe there's some mysteries of weather about how, St. Petersburg is vastly more cold than any other location on the Baltic Sea. Why? Magic. So maybe there's something I'm missing. But anyways, the United States has the best geopolitical position, and barring some sort of absolutely horrific event that changes the shape of the United States, that will continue to go forward into the future. However, in a financial sense, again, after having a few conversations with some people who know what they're talking about, it looks like the goose is nearly naked. And that's going to be the point where these adventures, I'll put it this way. It'll become the moment when America's losses become so big that they finally become Washington's losses. And that's what's really scary. It would be amazing if in 2024, let's just say some sort of wiser, loyal, influential forces from within the United States would stop Washington's winning streak of the military-industrial complex paying them out. But I don't know if that's going to happen. It'd be nice, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I can't really tell you when this is all going to come to a head. But as we see with more or less the inability for Washington to support Ukraine, and also to support, so if we want to talk about a golden goose, or I should say maybe not, maybe the golden calf of American foreign policy, Washington's sort of iffiness about supporting Israel. Of course, with words, sending some bombs and stuff, dumb bombs, the cheap bombs, the bombs in storage, yeah, that's easy. But I think if Hamas would have risen up like they just did recently, 10 or 15 years ago, the United States would have went in hard. And now it's kind of like, well, we'll park the ships over there and we'll shoot from far away. Oh, wait, we're not even shooting. We'll just park our Navy over there in the hopes that that'll intimidate essentially like partisan military, it wouldn't be partisan, wouldn't be the word, sort of, kind of militiamen style fighters, terrorists to some, militia heroes to others. They are not going to be intimidated by naval forces that are sort of beyond their perception. Both sort of in a metaphorical way and in a literal way, because the ships are so far away that they literally can't be seen by the human eye, maybe even not by binoculars. But anyways, yeah. So we also have been seeing this situation within with the Houthis there in Yemen, threatening pretty much every Israeli ship, and the United States not really being able to do much about it, and delaying and detaining. We've seen attacks on U.S. military bases all over the sort of Levant plus Tigris-Euphrates region. Things are changing. And it looks like after Washington has won all of these wars of luxury and luxury creation, in 2024, it's kind of looking like maybe the golden goose here is maybe not only naked, but getting cooked. I don't know, guys. These are definitely some big changes. And like I said, 10 or 15 years ago, it'd be impossible to say or to even imagine that there'd be this sort of massive series of attacks, somewhat coordinated on U.S. bases outside the context of like the Iraq War or something. Yeah, even after putting in a friendly regime and being in Iraq for whatever 20 years and being in Syria for a long time since Obama, that they'd be able to do that. So it seems kind of hard to imagine, but that's what's happening. There is sort of a global resistance, and Washington may have finally actually bitten off more than it can chew. And unfortunately, in the same way that when America is forced to lose, so that way Washington politicians can win and fill their pockets, the real losers of this are going to be probably the American masses, who are going to have to pay the toll for the potentially biggest corruption scandal in history. Is, for at least for today, the military-industrial complex. So this is all very sad, but there is a real potential for this to actually come to a head in 2024. Because again, the Ukrainian front has fallen apart. The ability for the United States to support its treasured golden boy Israel has been very limited, and has been even squeamish about that. And what if then a third and a fourth front open up? Looks like they're trying to do a color revolution in Serbia. What if some sort of new conflict opens up in Yugoslavia that NATO doesn't have the bombs for this time? Or the whole Taiwan thing? What about the North-South Korea situation, which could escalate at any moment, especially now that the North Koreans have access to all the goodies that Russia can produce? We have the conflict, which I think Maduro may have actually gotten the invisible signature from the Biden regime to start selling the U.S. oil again if they could invade Guyana or whatever. Not Guyana. Guinea. I always forget. I would keep hearing it in Russian. But anyways, to invade their neighbor and take back that province that they claim to have lost long ago. So anyways, that one, if it does have Washington's blessing, then they can ignore that. If it doesn't really have Washington's blessing, then that's yet another sort of front in this global war of post hegemonic realignment that's kind of going on. So anyways, as 2023 comes to a close, we can still say that Washington always wins. But will we be able to say that when 2024 comes to a close? I'm not so sure.